Okay. Welcome, fellow druids. Another episode of Full Circle. I'm Chad, Cheddar Caveman on social media, and in this episode, what I want to talk about is some beginner content. And the reason I want to do that is because I got a request from a listener, or sorry, a watcher. I'm not a podcast, I'm a video. From a viewer who said that some beginner content would be really helpful, and felt that I hadn't focused as much on topics in that direction in a while. So just some caveats. I'm not going to cover everything necessarily in one episode. I may do some more. Also, I'm just going to talk sort of, this will still be somewhat high level on beginning the game, but and it won't necessarily be perfect for everybody, as being a beginner means sometimes you've never played, sometimes it means that you just new to Circle and things like that. So just take that into consideration. Also, just heads up, it's been a while since I've been a beginner, so the way I approach this and my memory of like when I was new may be not perfect at this point. So hopefully this will help, but you know, just some things to keep in mind. So with that in mind, I would like to start with my first bit of advice when you're new is that more important than the specifics of anything else that I'm going to say on what you should play, how you should approach playing, and whatnot, is that the important thing is to play. There's certainly ways that can be easier, they can be harder. I think the first advice that I would give is play games. Don't get so concerned about your list necessarily. We'll have a little bit more on that in a minute, but don't get so concerned about your list. This is not a game where you are going to win the game or lose the game at list creation. The more you play, the more you're going to be able to find the ability to win games or play well, even in situations that sometimes you read about people saying are not ideal or whatever. Additionally, don't be afraid early on to lose games. You're probably going to lose games. You're inexperienced with something. People are going to take advantage of your your inexperience, basically. And by take advantage, I don't mean like they're going to take advantage of you. I just mean they're going to be more experienced in the matchup, and as a result, you're going to have a rougher time than they are. That's okay. That's how you win, or that's how you learn. And in those losses, hopefully you can always find something to learn. That's another really key aspect, and this is true for games in general, but like try to look at when you play a game and see where you could have played better. And don't focus on everything necessarily when you're early on. Don't look for you know, every little mistake you could have made, because there's probably a number of them. Even in high level games, there's usually more than, you know, sometimes it can be one very crystallizing moment, but a lot of times it's actually a few smaller nuanced things. So look for at least one, maybe two things in each game where you could have done something differently and maybe the outcome would have been better, or at least think about what you could try in the next game. Especially important if you play against similar opponents a lot, since they'll probably bring similar lists and you're going to get another chance to play against what they're doing. Okay, so that said, play games. Don't worry about winning. Just play and learn. And then let's talk about lists. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some places you can start with your list, but even more important than what that list contains is that when you're new, that you stick with the same list for quite a while. And by quite a while, I mean essentially no less than 5 games, and in an ideal sense, I would say more in the 20 or more games. Again, depending on your skill level with the game. If you're just coming over to Circle, some of this, you know, if it doesn't apply to you, that's fine. But if you're very new to Circle, and especially if you're very new to the game, don't quickly switch from playing one thing to, especially your Warcaster or Warlock. Don't switch from playing your Warlock because you've lost games or you're a little, you know, like it's not quite clicking. Play, like I said, the more games you can play with one Warlock and one list, the better you will become at the game overall. It will teach you to try to solve problems with what you have available to you in the list, and it will teach you, you will know the things that you're playing much better, just from experience from reading your cards, from and from not only that, but being able to find uses for things that maybe like reading it didn't show you, right? Things that like playing with terrain will show you, you know, because there's a lot of like, where's the terrain on the table? Where's the scenario on the table? What are, you know, maybe there's something I didn't see here. Maybe the internet's never talked about this, and like they've talked about this unit being really good, but you won't know why until you play it. So play a lot of games and I would say stick with one list for the first as many games as you feel like you can, basically. There are warlocks in this game. You could play 200 games and still be learning stuff. Not everyone, certainly, but no warlock will you and no list will you not be learning things at the 10 to 20 game line. That's just the situation this game has. So that's the biggest thing. Play games, focus your direction in one. Focus yourself in one direction. So if you're not sure where to start, so let's look into where to start with that potentially, and give, you know, here, so I'm going to talk through a few options for you, because I think another part of when you're beginning is sort of like, what should I buy, is very, you know, very much what people are thinking about. And or, you know, I like this aesthetic, how can I make it work? So I hear a lot of that from beginners. So if you have looked at the faction and you've picked out some specific models and some specific thoughts, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but this part won't necessarily be the thing you absolutely need. If you haven't thought about that, though, I still recommend you start by purchasing a battle box. And for Circle, and the reason for that is Tanith is a fantastic warlock, both to start with and to grow with, as she actually will only get better for you as you get better. And that's a really awesome feature. Not every faction's starting warlock has that benefit. I actually think Tanith can be played by the most beginner, I've never played the game before player, all the way up to the you know, I want to try to win the biggest tournament of the year player. So I really like that about her. And part of the reason that that's the case is she sort of has a tool for every job, and that's also going to help you learn the game as you sort of see what the priorities are for how you cast spells and where they need to go, and how you can buff different things, and how you can affect things offensively and so forth. So I really like Tanith for that regard. Like I said, she has a lot of tools. She's a more offensively focused warlock, but she does have defensive nature as well. Additionally, the pieces in that box are going to be valuable to you to have in your collection. You get a Pureblood Warpwolf, you get a Gorax Rager, and you get a Wild Argus. All three of those things are featured. They're not necessarily featured in every single list, but they will be features of enough lists that it's certainly worth spending the money on the box. And frankly, a Pureblood Warpwolf outside of that box costs you $35 anyways, and that's, the box is $40. So it kind of makes sense just to get, just to pick up the battle box at that point. But like I said, all those pieces are going to be good. So if you haven't played much of the game at all, spend some time, probably play a few battle box games, in fact, too. I'm not going to necessarily go totally into that, like what that should entail, but you know, that's still the learning place. I would say once you've gotten those under your wings, you can start building her in a bunch of different ways, but definitely make sure you're reading through her cards, what she does, how her feat works, what her feat can do. Read through the cards for the models there. From there, you're going to want to build in the direction of 75 points. So one of the other reasons I like suggesting Tanith as a starting point is because she actually can build into many of our themes. And so for people returning to the game or new to the game, one of the things as of fall of 2017 is that now every model in the game has a theme force that they can be played in. Now, every game doesn't, you are not required to build in theme, but I would call it heavily encouraged. And I would say when you're starting out, I would focus on a theme, because you're going to get additional benefits for playing it, including, and it's going to get you used to the notion of what playing it, like what list building in a theme is and how they play. And just real quick, a theme is, if you don't know what a theme is, it's as the name suggests, a thematic list building tool that will give your army additional benefits for staying inside of the parameters of doing so, as well as generally giving you some number of models that you are not required to pay their full point cost for. And all those things combined will add up to your list being hopefully competitive with other people's lists, as well as being interesting and having some cool like fluffy type tie-ins, which is I actually really like too, because it helps armies be a little bit more cohesive in my opinion. So one of the reasons I like Tanith is Circle actually has 5 theme forces, and you can go. I actually have episodes on each of them, so I'm not going to go into detail on all of them necessarily, but she gives you the ability to choose which of those theme forces you would like to play. And this is where, if you were coming to the faction because of a specific model or specific theme force, specific play style, to start taking a look at which of those themes you think most applies to you. So the one thing that I will say starting out early, regardless of the battle box contents, is I recommend that Circle with their battle group actually has sort of 2 paths, and this is going to inform purchase choices as well, but sort of has 2 paths that you can go down as far as battle group, and that is either we have a number of construct war beasts and we have a number of living war beasts. For the most part, because of how our support models work, I recommend, especially when you're new, that you pick sort of what battle group you think you're going to prefer. And that's because that's going to inform the rest of how your lists are selected, what themes you're looking at, and the additional support models that you need to make sure that you have and that you learn how to use in order to become better at the game. There are some things that are specific, that are generic across all themes. In Circle, that's primarily the Shifting Stones unit and the Gallows Grove solo. So I would definitely take a look at those. You're going to be seeing access to those come up a lot. Look at what the rules are. Make sure you understand what they do, how they work. If you want, you can watch my specific episodes on those. So those are going to be I think those are common to every theme, so that's a good place to know. And then there's a few things that are common to a few themes, specifically Blackclad solos, the Blackclad Wayfarer and the Blackclad. We'll just start with him. He's going to be common kind of amongst different lists, so 3 or 4 or 5 themes include him, and he's a prominent feature, at least presently, of those. So those are another purchase that will be rewarding to make sure that you have access to. From there, I definitely recommend that you, like I said, choose whether you're going the living route or the construct route with the wolds. If you want to go the living route, you're going to want to, so you already have there's already the Gorax you have, which is one of the primary support pieces. Like I said, the Blackclads, and that's, you're going to want to make sure you have those, and then you're going to want to, and that will synergize with other living models that you may buy. If you want to go the construct route, you're going to want to look into getting 3. If you're on a budget, start with 1 or 2, but 3 Blackclad Stone Shapers, and because those are going to have a myriad of abilities that will support our Wold War Beasts, the construct war beasts. From there, there's a lot of different directions you can go, but I definitely recommend you can stick with Tanith if you don't know where to go. If you have another caster in mind because you've read about stuff, there's a few other casters you can go with. If you want to focus a little bit more, Tanith can play in all 5 themes. I recommend, if you want to focus on constructs, to try to build her with the Bones of Orboros team. And purchases for that are, you're going to want to look at buying, mostly for your heavy war beasts, I would recommend 1 to 2 Wold Wardens. They're a very good piece right now for Circle, and learning how they play is going to be really key. Consider 1 of the Wold Guardians. There aren't as many Wolds, so this selection process is actually a little easier, but 1 to 2 Wold Wardens I would say is where you want to start. And then consider really any of the other wolds to kind of fill out the rest of your list. I would look at the Sentry Stone and Mannequins unit as one of your units to learn how to play if you're going to go that route. Again, I'd have Shifting Stones and so forth. These lessons will pass on to other warlocks as well if you're going to do Bones. And certainly you can consider Megalith as a character. He's the character Wold, and he plays in that theme as well. So that theme doesn't have as many in-depth options as the other ones, but it does have enough, and certainly don't be concerned that you may need to double or triple up on some of the options here. You eventually probably will want to. The Celestial Fulcrum is another, if you want to get into the battle engine, you can go that route with that theme. But again, early on, I would probably wait because it's a little bit more of a pricey purchase, even though it's a very cool model and it's a very strong piece. You may want to hold off until you've played a few more games. If you go the living route, so I'm going to break this down sort of three ways. I'm going to go Living Beasts, and then we're going to talk about infantry as well. So if you want to go the Living Beast route, there is a weird, so just a caveat, there is a weird interaction with the benefits of Call of the Wild, and I talk about that in that theme video. But with Tanith, so go check that out if you're really interested in that. But she can still play in the Living Beast theme. And if playing the Living, if going the route of Living Beasts is more your option or more your style, you can start with Tanith. I also recommend, and I'm going to give some recommendations. I'll go back and give recommendations for the other ones too. If you don't want to start with Tanith, I recommend starting with Chromac 2 is actually a pretty decent place to start. That gives you a lot of options with your Living Beasts, and or you could go with Kaya 2 or Kaya 3. Actually, either of them I recommend starting with. If you're going to play with those as your living options, I definitely recommend that you start off. Again, those Black Lead Wayfarers are going to be key. I would at the time of this recording, I would recommend, you probably don't need any more lights than the two that came in your battle box, or you need to get a Gorax and a Wild Argus if you don't. The others do have uses, but I would start with those. They're a little bit more staples. The Pureblood Warpwolf is definitely going to be a staple. And I would in general say any of the Warpwolves are, the non-character Warpwolves specifically, are going to be the ones that will give you the most mileage in this theme. There are certainly places that the Satyrs can be played. Absolutely, the Scarsfell Griffin ends up being played, and you should probably look to buy one or two of those at some point. But if you're not sure where to start, I would still start with Warpwolves, as they're going to really highlight how that side of our faction works, and they're gonna give you the pieces you're looking for that. So look at your living Warpwolves. Warpwolves for your Living Beasts. Light War Beasts focus at this time on the Gorax, the Wild Argus, and or the Scarsfell Griffin. I do think that there's places for all the other ones, but those are the ones that you'll probably get a little bit more use out of. If you want to play infantry, it's gonna if you're looking to play a little bit more combined arms or a little bit more infantry focused, then you're gonna want to look. So these kind of get broken out aesthetically into the Druid models, the Tharn models, and the Wolves models. In that case, what I would actually probably recommend, if you want to do the Wolfsworn, I would recommend one of each unit: Skinwalkers, Wolves Warboros, Reeds Warboros, with the requisite attachments, and 3 Warwolves. Start with that as your list, and just see how it plays for you. Again, Tanith's a great place to start. You could do Grail in that case. I would start with one of those two if you're going to go that route. If you want to go with Devourer's Host, which is the Tharn, I recommend either, probably I recommend starting with Bloodweavers, Tharn Ravagers, and possibly Blood Trackers. The Cavalry's good, and doubling up on some of those is good, but and if you double up on any of them, I would start with Ravagers. Make sure you buy all of the support solos for them and their attachments. And you can build that with Tanith again is fine. Sorry, I just blanked. Tanith, possibly Morhana 2, possibly Kruger 1. possibly Baldur 1. All would be fine places to start with that. Just a caveat, Devourer's Host does only support the living Warbeasts. The list that I mentioned before that in the Wild Hunt does support either Warbeast, but just keep in mind you are not allowed to take the support piece for the Wolves. So I tend not to recommend that you go like the melee Wolves route there. You could include some of the like gun Wolves that don't necessarily need the support as much, I would say. And then some living, so you can combine them there. It's one of the nice features. And then if you want to go Secret Masters, and that's the Druids theme, you can. Again, Tanith would be a fine place to start, but you could also go with Morvana 1, who is actually kind of a tricky caster, but you know, if that's really the direction you want to try, I would try Morvana 1, Tanith, and maybe Baldur 1. Any of those casters that are able to play with many different things. I don't tend to recommend that you start in Secret Masters because I think it's a more complicated list to play, but one of the things I always have recommended is if you know you want to play a certain thing, start by playing it. You know, I've one bit of advice I would not take from other people is, and I've heard this in the past, is, oh, well, you shouldn't start playing faction X because it's really complex. You should play a more straightforward faction. Or you shouldn't play with Y because it's very difficult to play. You should try to find something more basic. There's some validity to that. However, if what you know is, I want to play this is the thing that drove me to the game, I don't want to buy some, you know, then don't buy don't buy something you don't know that you like just to learn it and then just go to the thing you like. You're better off playing, as I said, more games. Now, if it's a more difficult piece to play with, keep in mind you may lose more games. It may take you more time. That's okay. I would not focus around how many games you win is not what I would focus on as a success. What you want to focus on your success is playing the best game that you can. And that will take time. And learning how to use pieces, and that will also take time. The scale of like quote good to quote bad in this game is not so dramatic that like even if you played with what people consider the worst models, that if you play them to a decent level it's going to lose you games. Like the degree in which things vary is not that great in this game. They're very, very close. So keep that in mind. At some point, maybe from here, like I said, so this has gotten actually a little more rambling than I'd aimed for. But if you've watched my show before, you probably come to expect that. But those are the places that I would really, really highlight early on. And I think if you're not sure, what you need to do is look at what's new for you and use the resources available to you, right? So this video is one resource. I actually, in the show notes, I have a Discord, I have a Facebook group that you can find if you search for Full Circle. You should be able to find it. You can be a member of. There's a Circle Ouroboros Facebook group. Use these things to sort of ask these questions. Like, you know, if you don't know how to make a list for something, you know, let's say, like I said, you want to play, you looked at the pictures and you saw Kaya 3 and you really love seeing the, you know, the wolf mounted rider, or I'm trying to think of another great example, Chromac 2, who, you know, this big gorgeous rough looking fighter, you know, type warlock. Or even if it's just another model, right? You saw the Celestial Fulcrum and it's just a big gorgeous model. You really want to know how it works and play it. For things like that, definitely just ask, like, you know, does anybody have a list that works with this? And you'll get some feedback. Now, that said, don't get so concerned with this thing won this event or this did this or whatever. Look, you just want to look for a place to start. And if you don't have to build lists on your own. There's a lot of resources out there. Discount Games Incorporated has tournament lists. Those groups I just mentioned will certainly share some lists if you ask. I will absolutely share lists with you in my Full Circle group, and I will possibly try to post some of those anyways here. Although we're still ramping up, so the number of people are low. So if you're watching this and you're like, well, he talked about playing lists and he talked about things to get, and I still need a little more specific, that's going to be a great avenue to go. The community in general is very friendly. The one thing not to do is my group is probably going to be a little bit more moderated, but don't over concern yourself with, if people say something is bad but you're still interested, don't be too concerned with it. Some things are harder to play than others, but the negativity is usually a few people who are very loud with it. Don't focus on it. Look for look for the list, look for the advice, take that, play your games, see how it works. And that's really the best advice I can have. So just as a wrap up, Tanith is a good warlock to start with. Pick a theme force and focus in that direction. Build a list and play as many games with it as you can. And don't be disheartened by losing. Try to learn something from it. Those, if I had to like TLDR this entire episode, those would be the things that you need to take away. Again, let me know if this was helpful or not. I'm a little worried that it's just been too long since I've been new, and so I may be a little more rambly than normal. So let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if there's a specific direction from here that you think would be valuable for me to go, for you or for everyone. One or two voices doesn't necessarily mean that I'll absolutely do the episode exactly that way, but it'll give me a sense of who's listening and where they may go from there. So anyways, if you like the episode or you like the episodes in general, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode. I'm trying to post small, varied length content on a more daily basis during the week. Feel free to check out the Facebook group, as I mentioned. There's a link to the Discord server in the notes, and you can catch me on Twitter as well. Feel free to share the episode anywhere that you want to get more attention. So anyways, thanks again, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time.